Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the presentation of the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program. This is a technical assistance webinar, and it is provided by the Educator Excellence and Equity Division at the California Department of Education, or the CDE. My name is Allison Pettit, and I'm an Education Programs Consultant with the Professional Learning Innovations Office. And I'm joined by my colleagues Han Tran and Julia Agostinelli. And please note that this webinar is being recorded. At this time, everyone has been placed on mute. As questions arise, please type in your questions into the chat box or into the question and answer box, and we will do our best to answer questions as they come up in the presentation or at the end of the presentation as well. The PowerPoint with the notes will be available on the CDE Anti-Bias Education webpage at www.cde.ca.gov/PD/PS/antibiasgrant.asp. The Anti-Bias Education Grant Program funding was established by Assembly Bill 130, Chapter 44, Section 157 of the 2021-22 California State Budget. The law requires that the state superintendent of public instruction, or the SSPI, award a minimum of 50 grants to local educational agencies, or LEAs, and funds are available for expenditure or encumbrance through the 2025-26 fiscal year. For the 2021-2022 fiscal year, the sum of $10 million was appropriated from the general fund to the SSPI. The SSPI shall award a minimum of 50 grants to LEAs. An LEA shall not receive a grant of less than $75,000 and no more than $200,000. Again, these funds are available for expenditure or encumbrance through the 2025-26 fiscal year. However, LEAs may expend all anti-bias education grant program funds early. And please note that regardless of whether the funds are expended early, LEAs must commit to participating in the 4 community of practice convenings. On June 30th, 2022, AB 181, Section 138 of the Education Omnibus Budget Trailer Bill was chaptered. The legislation appropriates $10 million for the 2022-23 fiscal year for the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program. The CDE may utilize this competitive grant process to award an additional $10 million. The 2022-23 funding requires that the SSPI award a minimum of 50 grants to LEAs. And please visit the CDE Anti-Bias Education webpage for updates on this funding. The purpose of the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program is to prevent, address, and eliminate racism and bias in all California public schools, and making all public schools inclusive and supportive for all people. The grant program seeks to provide professional support to educators to develop skill and competency to interrupt and eliminate bias by activating changes to structures, processes, and practices that, when implemented, will make a real difference in the educational experiences and outcomes of students. Anti-Bias Education Grant Program funds may be used for training and resources to prevent and address bias and prejudice towards any group of people based on race, ethnicity, religion, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, immigration status, language, or any actual or perceived characteristic listed in section 422.55 of the Penal Code. Emphasis shall be placed on preventing bias and prejudice towards groups, including to, but not limited to, Jews and members of the Jewish community, African Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders, Latinos, and people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning youth. Allowable activities for an anti-bias education grant may include, but are not limited to, any of the following. Professional development on topics that address hate, bigotry, racism, or any form of bias or prejudice, including but not limited to design features of equitable learning environments, classroom management techniques, emotional wellness, self-regulation, and strategies designed to increase teachers' skill for mitigating bias, fostering caring and developmental relationships, and practices and approach when managing pupils in academic and disciplinary settings to support deep and engaged learning. Opportunities for teachers, administrators, pupils, and other school staff and members of the governing board or body of the LEA to review policies, practices, and procedures that can promote bias, such as referrals for discipline, special education, and course placement, and to update those policies, practices, and procedures to foster in pupils a sense of belonging and connection. The development or updating of a comprehensive bias a mitigation or diversity plan based on the identified needs of the LEA, using its data and tied to specific outcomes such as increasing staff diversity or more racially proportionate pupil discipline referrals. Curriculum that is appropriate for pupils in kindergarten or any of the grades 1 through 12, inclusive of topics that address hate and bigotry, racism, or any form of bias or prejudice, promote self-love, self-acceptance, and pride in one's multiple identities, understanding one's own and other cultural histories and contributions, and empathy for and meaningful connection with others. Support of pupil-initiated and pupil-led efforts to combat hate and bigotry, racism, or any form of bias or prejudice, and to co-design new approaches to address bias and foster a sense of belonging and connection, and to ensure that decisions, actions, and designs are informed by student voice, needs, and aspirations. Professional development and the curriculum for the anti-bias education grant program shall use evidence-based strategies. For the purpose of this grant, the CDE has borrowed the following definition for evidence-based practice. And as defined by the Every Student Succeeds Act, and the link is here, an evidence-based practice is an activity, strategy, or intervention that, quote, it demonstrates a statistically significant effect on improving student outcomes and other relevant outcomes, end quote, and based on strong evidence, moderate evidence, promising evidence, or a rationale with, quote, ongoing efforts to examine the effects of activity, strategy, or intervention, end quote. Additional guidance and strategies for building equitable learning environments and centering on student experience in school improvement efforts using evidence-based tools. Visit the Building Equitable Learning Environments, or BELE, Equitable Learning Library at library.belenetwork.org. Grounded in the pillars of the BELE framework, these resources describe the changes and processes needed to create supportive, engaging, and caring environments for students and adults to learn and thrive. The BELE framework can be found on the BELE Network Framework webpage at belenetwork.org/library-resources/the BELE framework. We are collaborating with the National Equity Project to provide grantees with professional development and support in the implementation of their programs. This will include webinars and community of practice convenings. The National Equity Project is a leadership development and systems change organization committed to developing people's capacity to achieve thriving, self-determining, educated, and just communities. Their mission is to transform the experiences, outcomes, and life options for children and families who have historically been underserved by our institutions and our systems. The core belief of the National Equity Project is the role of rebel leaders is to make inequitables visible, to disrupt harmful discourse, practices, and policies that perpetuate racialized outcomes, and to imagine new ways to engage and co-design with our communities so that each of us, adults and young people, can learn, develop, thrive, and experience a sense of belonging. The grant period is from September 2023 through March 30th, 2026. The CDE shall evaluate the grantee's performance and success. The Anti-Bias Education Grant Program recipients will comply with the reporting needs specified by the CDE. This may include data collection and analysis not proposed by the LEA throughout the expenditure period ending in 2026. Applicant eligibility is limited to LEAs defined as a school district, county offices of education, or a COE, or directly funded charter schools within the state of California that serves students in transitional kindergarten through grade 12. Applicants must demonstrate a need for additional anti-bias education and training and describe how the funds will be used. Community agencies, private schools, individual public schools, and state special schools are not eligible to apply for the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program. Consortiums of LEAs may apply. Each participating LEA in a consortium is eligible to apply for up to $200,000. The maximum grant award for each consortium depends on the number of participating LEAs. The lead applicant will serve as a fiscal agent and be responsible for all grant deliverables. The lead applicant should submit one application on the behalf of the consortium and indicate in the executive summary all of the LEAs to be included in the consortium. Include one project budget for the consortium. The budget narrative should clearly explain how funds will be spent among the consortium members. And no consortium member may spend more than $200,000. And provide any additional information related to the operations of the consortium in the proposed activities section of the online application. And be prepared to provide letters of commitment from all consortium members prior to the grant award notification being issued. The following slides are being highlighted to support the LEA's development of the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program application. CDE's Asset-Based Pedagogies webpage contains resources to support culturally sustaining pedagogy, culturally and linguistically responsive teaching, and culturally relevant pedagogy. Asset-based pedagogies focus on the strengths that diverse students bring into the classroom. And it is a direct response to deficit-based models to education in the past. And this webpage provides definitions and resources. The CDE's Research Data and Reports webpage contains research and data and reports on supporting LGBTQ+ students and providing overall school climate for LGBTQ+ students and their educators and their families. The Supporting LGBTQ+ Students webpage contains instructional guidance, law, and policies for local educational agencies to support LGBTQ+ students and provide safe learning environments that protect the health, safety, and LGBTQ+ students. The CDE published the transformative SEL competencies in the spring of this year. They describe the knowledge, skills, dispositions, and the capacities of students and young people can develop when the conditions are supportive of their healthy whole development. The CDE aims to support and advance the efforts of educators across California who are working to fully integrate systemic SEL and equity by building on the promise of transformative SEL as a concept. To provide these supports, the CDE has articulated developmental indicators for the 5 core SEL competencies. The California transformative SEL competencies complement the California transformative SEL conditions for thriving. The conditions for thriving provide recommended practices and actions that adults across the education system can use to co-create conditions that support transformative SEL development. Implemented thoughtfully and consistently and in collaboration with leaders working at all levels of the education system, these practices and actions can support development of equity-focused learning environments in which children, youth, adults have opportunities to develop and practice the transformative SEL skills. In this slide, it consists embedded links of the resources of the National Equity Project. And these resources, they cover the following topics: responding to microaggressions and unconscious bias, implicit bias strategies, implicit bias, racial anxiety, and stereotype threat, structural racism, systemic oppression, and the art of conversation. Lastly, WestEd's anti-racist evaluation strategies, a guide for evaluation teams, contains strategies to conduct anti-racist evaluations.
The following slides address specific requirements of the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program application. Submission requirements. Applicants must complete an electronic application available at www.cde.ca.gov/pd/ps/antibiasgrant.asp. Online application instructions for the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program are included in the appendix of the Request for Applications or RFA. Respond to all sections of each prompt of the narrative description. Separately attach supporting evidence such as budgets, assurances and certifications, and letters of commitment if applicable. Provide the appropriate digital signature, and finally, please submit the application by July 20th, 2023 before 4 p.m. Refer to the scoring rubric for the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program to understand how responses for each application will be evaluated by the reading panel. When saving responses, please note that you must select the Save Responses button on the first page of the online application if you do not intend to complete the application in one session. Once you select the Save Responses button, a page will appear that asks for your email address. You will receive an email with a unique URL or web address for entrance back into the application. Although you should receive the confirmation email, it is recommended that you copy the URL on the application page and save it. This address will allow you to return to your application. The application narrative for the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program is broken up into 6 parts: executive summary, theory of action, demonstrated need and past anti-bias efforts, proposed activities, proposed metrics, application budget. The application budget covers the entire grant period from September 2023 through March 2026. The proposed budget template is available on the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program webpage. There are 6 tabs that need to be completed: 1 tab for the cover sheet, 1 for the budget summary, 4 tabs for the budget narratives, 1 for each year of the grant. Only unlocked cells may be edited. The budget documents must be submitted as an Excel file through the online application. Please see the attachment instructions in the online application instructions section of the RFA. Please note that the budget will be reviewed and scored. The proposed budget detail must include a detailed budget narrative for each line item included in the grant period. The narrative should include how the proposed costs are necessary and reasonable in terms of grant activities, benefits to participants, and grant outcomes. Provide sufficient detail in a breakdown or calculation that justifies each line item. Group line items by the object code series and provide lines for object code totals. The proposed budget summary should provide totals for each object code and must align with the proposed budget detail. Please ensure that the budget includes funding for at least 1 team member to participate in person in 1 community of practice convening. Other funding may be used to procure goods and services from the National Equity Project. However, due to the CDE's partnership with the National Equity Project, Anti-Bias Education Grant Program grant funds may not be used to purchase National Equity Project goods nor services. Review process. Only fully completed applications will be considered eligible for consideration and advanced to the reader conference. A panel of readers selected for their expertise will read, review, and score each eligible application using a scoring rubric. The rubrics can be found in the RFA. Points will be awarded based on quality, completeness, and responsiveness of the application to each of the required application components. Although scores are important, they would not be the only factor considered when selecting awards. Each section has a specific amount of points, with each item in a section having a maximum point value. The executive summary has a total possible point value of 4. The theory of action has a total possible point value of 12 points. Demonstrated need and past anti-bias efforts is 20 points. Proposed activities is 24 points. Proposed metrics is 16 points, and budget and cost effectiveness comes in at 8 points. Please note that the CDE may request revisions to budgets. As a reminder, point values are not the only factors considered when selecting an awardee. Application timeline. Please note the important upcoming deadlines. The RFA was released on June 1st, 2023. Applications are due to the CDE on July 20th by 4 p.m. The intent to award will be posted during the week of August 28, 2023. The last day for appeals to be received by the CDE will be 1 week after the intent to award is posted. Final awards are to be posted in September 2023. Please note that this timeline is subject to change. The CDE Anti-Bias Education Grant Program webpage will be the most up-to-date place to find any changes to the timeline.
All right, so we're going to take a moment now just to read over if there were any unanswered questions from the Q&A, but I think Julia did a great job at answering your questions as they came up. Julia, do you think there's any that we want to highlight here for the group?
It looks like one more just came in asking about whether or not there are rubrics for scoring. And yes, if you look, I believe it's Appendix A, you will find in the application, you will find the scoring rubric. So make sure to scroll all the way at the end of the application, and you will see both the online application instructions, which have the character counts that are allowed for each response, as well as that scoring rubric. And that's a really great place to start when thinking about how to respond to questions in the application. And then there's another question about additional rounds of funding. And while we certainly hope that this work continues to be funded, at this time, these are the funds we have allotted for this program from the Department of Finance through the Budget Act. Yeah, so it looks like there is another question about whether or not you can, if you applied in the first round, whether or not you can determine what your scores were. Certainly, we encourage you to send an email to, let me put it in the chat, request, oops, that's not the right one there. Han, would you mind copying the anti-bias email inbox in there? You can email us and we will send you scores from that first round of request for applications. And then there's another question regarding funding. Sorry if I was not quite loud enough earlier. I just realized my headset was up. So regarding the funding, whether it's $200,000 per year or split amongst the years that you are funded, and it is the years that you are funded. So you would break that funding of $200,000, if that's what you chose to apply for, into those years in the application budget. So. And then there is another question regarding how much to request, how much you're able to request, and if there are guidelines. We don't have guidelines. So our recommendation is that you consider the needs of your school and your LEA and determine what projects you feel will meet the needs of the students and support them in the best way, and determine the funding that way. So each LEA is allowed to request the total amount or a lesser amount if you need less to do what you're hoping to. Okay, so there is another question, which is new. I haven't gotten this one before. So within an LEA, can the funding support one school, or does it need to support all schools? That's a great question. I definitely think as the LEA is looking at the needs, if you find that one school is in need of that particular focused support, then and you write your plan to that, that certainly makes sense and would be allowed. And let's see here. There is another question from Danny Rodriguez about if we have a sample grant outline. Could you tell me more about what you mean by a grant outline? Okay, so there's a question about whether or not you could apply for additional funds if you received funds in the first round. At this time, we're asking for new LEAs to apply. And in terms of training for the original grant, we have National Equity Project hosted one webinar so far, and we do have a recording of that if you were not able to make it. For the community of practice, we are looking right now at finalizing that second week of October. And I believe Allison may have sent out a calendar appointment to everyone actually for that community of practice. So if you did not receive that, make sure you email our email inbox, and we'll update our contact list to be sure that you're getting information from us. And then there is another question about whether or not you're allowed to spend the budget entirely in the first year. And yes, you may expend funds early if you choose to. So you could choose to, if you're asking for 200,000, have a plan that requests to spend those funds entirely in the first year. Let's see. And then someone asked specifically about how to show that you want to expend the funds entirely in that first year. And we would know based on the amount that you requested that if you in that for year one tab put that entire amount, we would understand that those subsequent tabs would be empty. So local educational agencies are eligible to apply. There's a question about eligibility, and directly funded charter schools are included in that definition of local educational agencies. So I hope that answers your question, Alexandra, but please feel free to clarify if it does not. So there was a question about who is eligible to apply, and it says, just for clarity, specifically are independent LEAs eligible. And so local educational agencies are districts, directly funded charter schools. Some county offices of education are also local educational agencies if they have students, if they have their own schools within their county office. And that was kind of you, Dr. Rogers, to offer to share your application. Thank you.
No problem. I also had a question regarding, did I hear you correctly? If we were awarded with the first grant, are we not eligible for this one?
Right. We are seeking new LEAs at this time.
Oh.
I know. I'm so sorry. We're hoping, to reach as many local educational agencies as possible. And we are definitely speaking with the legislature about, the enormous need for this work and continued funding. So we're pushing as hard as we can to continue to have this work funded.
Okay, yeah, because when we had the webinar in May, we talked about possibly expanding on what efforts we were making with the first one, because that was a specific question I had asked. I had wanted to know if it was possible to just take the program that we currently have, and we recognize that there is a need to do a few other things, and will we be able to apply for this one? And at that time, the answer was yes, and so we started applying already. So now you're saying no. It kind of hurts my feelings.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. Well, we appreciate the work that you're doing, and we look forward to seeing you at the community of practice.
Not a problem. If anyone wants any assistance, seeing what we're currently working on, we receive the full funding. Be more than happy to help anybody with that, because I think that it's great work, and I think that we should all, have shared practices when we do this work. So if anyone wants any help, just send me an email.
All right, I'm just scrolling through the last of the questions here, and looks like most of them are reaching out to Dr. Rogers for that copy. So, okay, looks like there is another question in the chat here. It's, do consortiums have any benefit over individual applicants when it comes to the scoring rubric? So, not necessarily. It's all based on what your plan, how you have identified the needs for your LEAs and the plan that you have to address those needs. So, I would say we're always excited to see the work expand and reach more students. Of course, not at the expense of the plan being really, well developed. So not necessarily. I hope that answers your question. But sometimes it's really helpful for LEAs to pool resources. And that's exactly why we offered that in the second round of funding. We realized that not all LEAs have the same resources, depending on where they're located, the number of students in their LEA. And then Regina, I hope that you received the email address that you can email to ensure you are receiving updates and are linked to the community of practice. Now, those are for folks that have already been funded, and will subsequently be funded during this round. Right now, the community of practice is only available to those that have been awarded. We are looking at expanding our reach in terms of who. Oh, it looks like Allison already responded to that. So we are hoping to expand the reach, though, for our webinars, and we will share that information if we are able to. And someone asked about showing in the budget, the travel funds. There is a certain line item that is for travel. So you would put it in there. And if you have specific questions, you're welcome to reach out to us to ask about which line item where you would put that.
I'm wondering if something is developed for our LEA, an educational series. Is it possible to invite other LEAs as long as we're doing it internally as the priority?
So just to clarify, so you're asking like a question about like a consortium of LEAs applying then? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I understand what that is. And maybe that's what I need to look at. I'm just this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. So I'm very new to this whole process. Mm-hmm. And I'm the lead for equity and inclusion for a county office. And my work tends to be, I make the thing here and we do it internally. And I also offer it to the larger community. And I'm asking if something is developed and used internally at HCOE and could be a benefit to other LEAs, can we offer that as well at the same time, or does it just have to be internal?
No. So, and Julia, if I misspeak, please fix fix what I'm about to say. But no, I think no. So I think right. Right, the work that you are intending to do at the county level, you're hoping to then have an impact at your LEAs, and I think that that's appropriate. So you would just outline that in the application, right? Kind of, how is the work initiating at the county level, right? And the work that's going to happen there, and then what are the intentions on how that work then translates or is shared at each of your LEAs.
That's exactly right.
Beautiful. Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
And I believe with that, we have answered all the questions. So I will turn it back to Allison.
Yeah, and please continue, just to put your questions in the chat or the Q&A. We have both of those going on. So just the following slides are links to the resources slides that we discussed earlier. So these are the actual links. So applicants may find the following resources helpful in the development of the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program application. So the website for the CDE asset-based pedagogy page is at www.cde.ca.gov/pd/ee/asset-based pedagogies.asp. The CDE LGBTQ+ resources page can be found at www.cde.ca.gov/pd/ee/support LGBTQ.asp. And the CDE transformative SEL competencies and conditions, they can be found at www.cde.ca/CI/TESEL.asp. The QPLS can be found at www.cde.ca.gov/PD/PS/QPLS.asp. And WestEd's anti-racist evaluation strategies, a guide for evaluation teams, can be found at www.west-ed.org/wp-content/uploads/2021/anti-racist evaluations-R10 final ADA.pdf. And for additional information, you are encouraged to contact the Anti-Bias Education Grant Program team at antibiasgrants.cde.ca.gov. We thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.